Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author and master herbalist Jane Barlow Christensen. She is the second oldest of 14 kids and grew up in rural Idaho. She's known for her work with herbal remedies and natural healing as the owner of Barlow Herbal Specialties. It is a company that focuses on offering herbal products. She has a passion for teaching people about the benefits of medicinal herbs and how they are integrated into the daily life for health and wellness. We get into this, her podcast, and so much more. Enjoy this interview.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting into your world as an herbalist and everything that's led up to where you're at today. And to begin our conversation, I'd like to ask you, 4 years ago, this pandemic began, and it was actually going pretty hard in July, but there were so many uncertainties that were going on. And I'm curious now that we are kind of out of it, so to speak, how did you survive it and how did it change the way that you do things?
So keep in mind, I grew up with herbs. My dad was a botanist, and he was a medicinal botanist. So I grew up with plant medicine as a normal part of my life. So when the pandemic hit, I was immediately trying to wake people up. Like, if I'm being honest, it's like, look, this is,
sure.
My dad raised us to be not just into plant medicine and all of this, but he raised us to, a little bit of constitutionalists, if I'm, fully honest about it all. So, I was not worried. I was not afraid as far as of the virus. I think because I had such a powerful herbal arsenal that I'd been using for decades at this point, and I take good care of my health. I'm not overweight. I exercise every day. So all the things I think the people that had problems during, when the pandemic first broke out and there was all of the fear, I had none of the fear. And it actually was an interesting time. I mean, I don't know if that answered your question. Did that answer your question maybe?
Absolutely, it does. No, that's exactly what I was looking for. And I'm curious to kind of take that a little bit further. If I put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at Career Day, and one of the kids looked up and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" Here in 2024, how would you answer that child?
I would say I help people realize the power of their body and how important it is to take you through this life, and the habits that you get when you're a third grader, you compound on them and you carry them through your life, and you can either be very successful, very healthy, very happy, or you can be quite the opposite. And that's what I help people do. I help people learn how to use the gifts of Mother Nature, like plants and herbs and things that grow in your garden, and incorporate them and eat them and use them. And I teach people how to be healthy. That's how I describe it to third graders.
So let's take you back to the third grade. What did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
You know what? I wanted to be a mom.
Excellent.
Yeah. Easy.
So, yeah, absolutely it is. So, and it's one of the hardest jobs on the planet. So let me ask you this. Take me back to where you were born and raised and how you evolved into this career of helping people getting to a better place and showing them a better way. How did all of this kind of begin and evolve into who you are and what your mission is today?
Well, okay, so I grew up the second oldest of 14 kids. So that alone tells you there's a big difference in being raised with that many siblings, especially being one of the oldest. I'm second oldest. And we grew up religious. So of course this is where, I want to be a mother. I want to experience all that. But then because my dad did what he did and we were so into nature, we were always hiking, we were always learning to identify plants, I, at a very early age, fell in love with mostly hiking. And I'm still an avid hiker to this day. And when I was 18 years old, I fell in love with exercise. So I started teaching group exercise classes, and eventually I built my own gym with one of my sisters, and then my dad passed away. The gym fell apart as far as the business, and I started managing another health club. And then 4 years after my dad passed, which was 26 years ago, I restarted his company with another one of my sisters. And so I fell in love with fitness, and I already had this huge base of natural medicine, including food. So it was kind of this natural flow, and I ended up still teaching group exercise classes for 40 years. In fact, COVID shut down my teaching career because the gym I was teaching went out of business. So it was kind of an organic ending of my fitness career, but I'm, of course, still very active. So it was kind of this, really organic path through life where I grew up loving nature, loving herbal medicine. My dad used to take us hiking a ton. I fell in love with fitness when I was 18 as far as in the gym, lifting weights, teaching classes. And then it was like my kids got to be 18 and 19, and that's shortly after my dad passed, and then I restarted his company because I was like, okay, I'm free, my kids are grown, I don't really want to work in corporate America anymore, which was the fitness world I was in at that time was corporate, and I'm gonna start my dad's company again, back up. So it's been so organic as far as it just has been this beautiful flow through life and where I am now. So yeah.
That's a great story. So I'm curious, who's been kind of a hero or an inspiration in your life?
Oh, you know what? I think that everyday person that I get to come in contact with, I watch the light bulb go on for a normal person who's maybe been, struggling with their health and these long chronic issues, and then I watch the light bulb go on when they discover these remedies. It's like, oh, I remember my grandma used to do that. And so, I think that the everyday hero for me is the everyday person, because it takes a lot of bravery, courage, stamina, and stepping outside of the box. Like, you have to be an outlier to take charge of your own health on this level. And these people are brave. And because we've been taught to, trust our doctor, and I'm not saying don't trust your doctor, but the thing is you have and know your health the best. But to be able to say to a doctor, well, you want me to take this prescription for this issue, but there's something about it I really don't want to, and I want to do something natural. So if I've watched people become researchers, and then they're willing to be brave and step outside the box and be safe. Don't do something stupid that's going to put your life in danger. And those people are brave and courageous to step outside of the typical model of how people have been taking care of their health. So, yeah, everyday people are my heroes.
So if you could meet one person on the planet right now that you find fascinating, that you would love to spend a little time with, who would that be?
Oh, my God, that is the hardest question. Because that ebbs and flows depending on what I watch and who I follow. And I don't even know if I have someone at the top of my head. I have a friend here in Salt Lake who's a filmmaker, and he just, I think it was the end of last year, earlier this year, he released a documentary on RFK Jr. And I would actually love to sit in a room with him and get his view on what's going on politically, because I think it's such an interesting time. So probably RFK Jr.
What's interesting about him? He tends to be a lightning rod, and I did hear a extensive interview with Joe Rogan some months back, and I know he has very specific ideas on, vaccinations and things like that, but I didn't hear anything that was totally weird or out to lunch. I'm kind of surprised that he gets as much flack as he does.
Well, he gets flack, and I know so much about him. I also watched that episode of Joe Rogan. But he gets a lot of flack because it's against the mainstream norm, and there's a great awakening happening, at least from my perspective. People are waking up to things that we've been told just to accept at blind faith level. And because, my friend is the filmmaker and did his biography documentary this year, I've gotten a lot of insight from my friend, because we hike a lot together, and he just spent the day film. In fact, RFK Jr. was just in town last weekend here in Salt Lake hiking with my friend, because they're doing some other projects together while he's running. And he's not been getting the airtime from mainstream media, but luckily there's alternative media. There's a lot of podcasts. And yeah, I feel like he's really the real deal, and he's been kind of not been given a fair shake by the powers that be. So yeah, he'd be cool to sit down with.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot like, alternative remedies, aside from pharmaceuticals. That's kind of the metaphor of him. Like, if it doesn't fit within the prescription of, like, mainstream, then it's cast aside just because it is what it is. It's not because of what it's saying or doing. It's because of what the perception is. So that's interesting. What is it that motivates you every day and gets you up to do the work that you do, to help people, but to also evolve as a human being yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point in my life, I really feel like the world is changing exponentially. I think that we're in really humanity-changing times, and I feel like the gifts that I get to bring with my experience it's so powerful. I mean, I get up early, my feet hit the floor, and I'm out walking and hiking, and then I have this big, full, beautiful day. So I really believe that if I can impact one person while these, because we're in such changing times, so that, it motivates me to be able to even affect one person. It's pretty simple.
So what has been one of your favorite client success stories so far?
Well, let's see. I have a ton. Well, let me tell you a quick story. This is actually one of my favorite stories and I'll put it in a nutshell. So when I was 14, me and my siblings grew up in Idaho, and in Idaho, you can drive when you're 14 because it's a lot of farm country, and the farm kids need to get on tractors and trucks, and they need to help out on the farm. So even though I didn't grow up on a farm, when I was 14, on my 14th birthday, my dad took me out to drive and for a driving lesson. And we stopped at this country gas station to fill up with gas, and we went in to pay, and there was an older couple in front of us in the line. And just as me and my dad stepped up to the counter, the man did the classic clutch his heart and literally fell to the floor. And my dad always carried two things with him. In his right breast pocket, he had a wad of cash, and in his left pants pocket, he had a tincture bottle of cayenne pepper. And those were just the two things he had on him. So cayenne pepper is what's known as a vasodilator. And I literally, on that day, watched my dad stop this man's heart attack and I've since researched it heavily, but cayenne pepper can literally save the life of someone that you love using cayenne pepper. So that to me is a beautiful story because it's simple.
Wow.
It's easy. Yeah. So it was a powerful life lesson as a 14-year-old.
So I'm curious, in your life, what has been the best advice you've ever gotten?
Probably the best advice is, and I know my dad said this, was that every single thing you do every day will compound into either something, it'll take your life in a place you don't want, or it'll take your life in a place that you do want. And it's not about making an exponential leap, which sometimes those are good things, and you can absolutely do that. But where it's really going to make a difference is if you just day in, day out, do strong, healthy habits. And that's probably the best advice I've ever gotten.
So, the one thing about, herbs and alternative remedies is that it's always been something that's kind of been on the back burner. And you have mentioned a few times kind of coming into this level of enlightenment. There's a lot of things that are happening. Lots of things are changing in this world. Do you see us getting to a day where, what you're doing right now is at the forefront like pharmaceuticals are?
Yeah, I do. And I honestly think that was one of the biggest gifts from COVID, is that it woke a lot of people up to the fact that, I'm really vulnerable with my health and my ability to take care of myself without running to the doctor. And a lot of people were afraid to go to the hospital or to the doctor. And I do actually think that COVID was a jump start to helping us move faster in the direction of people. But, here's another quick thing that about 15 years ago, I started getting calls from medical doctors who were interested in the products that I have. And I carry on my dad's line of kind of hardcore medicinal stuff, and I've formulated some of my own as well. But what was most interesting to me is that two things. The medical doctors, first of all, didn't want to do their own treatments for themselves or their families, and they were looking for alternatives because they know how harsh some of these things are. And then the second thing is these doctors would have a patient who would get diagnosed with something kind of gnarly, and the patient would say, I really don't want to do this drug. I've read about the side effects or whatever it is, and they're motivated. They're like, what can I do naturally? I'm willing to do anything. I'll change my lifestyle. I'll do anything. So here you have a medical doctor who went into medicine to help people, and the Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm. And then they have a motivated patient sitting in front of them. So over the years, many of these people knew my dad, and they were, there's networks of doctors, and not just medical doctors, but naturopaths and chiropractors and acupuncturists, natural practicing doctors. These guys have networks with each other over the years. And my dad was around a long time, and a lot of people knew about him. He lectured at colleges. He was kind of amazing. But so what would happen is then these doctors would get a hold of me, and they would start just under the radar a little bit, helping their people using some of the remedies that I did, helping their people get on the path and themselves and their families. So to me, this is like the most beautiful time to be here and learn how to take care of yourself on this level.
Yeah, it is amazing. I was just listening to a book about a man that lived to be 109, and he was a doctor, actually from Kansas City. It's a national bestseller. It's called The Book of Charlie. And it kind of digs into, just kind of the wisdom of living that long and what you do. And they were just kind of going through how they used to do medicine and how early and archaic it was. And it's wild how far we've come and how many things we can do with, anesthetics and just all of these things. And it just, what you're saying totally makes sense. We are on a horizon right now of things we're harvesting things that I think are going to really ultimately not only extend our lives, but, hopefully get rid of diseases and make us just more conscious. And I think maybe that's what COVID did for all of us. It was a big wake-up call for the planet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that people need to realize that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater with our medical system. A long time ago, I had a horrific water ski accident. So 2 years ago, I had a full knee replacement because of that accident. And, this is where you take the amazingness of modern medicine. We shine in trauma care. We shine in surgeries like this. I have this amazing knee that, I probably would have been a little bit crippled for the rest of my life because my knee had gotten so bad from this accident. So I think that we need to take the best of what modern medicine has to offer and then take responsibility for the things where it's less than, we are worth something to the medical pharmaceutical industry if we're sick. But if we're empowered, like if we start voting with the way we take care of our health, then the model will change. So I think COVID definitely did that.
Well said. That's very well said, because I've often thought, how is it that we can get to a point where we can get people that represent us that don't go to the dark side, so to speak, or don't turn into something that's a coffer for, a lobbyist or whatever. And I think that's so well said. If we did take all of that more seriously, and I think, anyway, that could be a whole other rabbit hole. So I'm curious in your, I don't even want to go there. So in your career, of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved into now, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Well, so, I have a lovely little woo-woo story. I'll tell it super quick. But so when I first restarted my dad's company, I felt I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, because I'm kind of like, well, I have a lot of experience with plants and plant medicine, but I don't have the degree behind me like my dad. My dad was this brilliant botanist. And so I first initially started with his formulas, And then I started getting all these requests from people for, hey, do you have something for this ailment or for this organ system or this whatever? And so about 5 years in, I started working on a formula, and I did a ton of research. And then I gathered all my research, and I have this place where I do yoga and meditation. It's just a quiet room. And I sat with all my notes, and I was kind of like feeling a teeny bit overwhelmed, but I had done pages and pages of due diligence, and I had a ton of information in front of me. And so I wanted to take all of the plants and the research and boil it down into one perfect formula. So I kind of sat there. I was quiet for a minute, and my intention was out to the universe, God, creator, whatever you want to call it, please help me formulate this. So I sat and I just sat quiet. And all of a sudden, I started getting these like inspirational downloads. So I turned the page of this journal that I had all my notes in, and I opened this blank page, and literally within about 10 minutes, I had a formula of the herbs that needed to go in this particular blend and the exact percentages of each. And it was literally like an inspirational download. And at first I was like, holy crap, did that really just happen? And it took me about 10 years to talk about it, because I was kind of like, people are going to think I'm crazy. This doesn't sound, this sounds kind of woo-woo. And this was probably 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago, actually. But now it's like, this is how I formulate. And I've got some really beautiful, I've got a beautiful nootropic. I've got a lung blend that's just crazy good. And this is the way so what I'm most proud of is the ability I have to tune in to a higher power, a higher source, and really get inspirational downloads when I formulate after I do the due diligence, because that's a key piece of it too.
It's interesting, and this may be a little bit of a reach, but in my other incarnation of what I do is I have a jazz radio show, and I have always been amazed. I've been doing it since 2011 as to how powerful these musicians are that literally walk into the unknown, the level of improv that goes into what they're doing.
Yeah.
And every single time, you know what I'm saying? Every time they do that, they're not going, everybody's answer as a musician when I ask them why do they love jazz, it's always about freedom. And there's a level of them that just lets it go and they just grab it as it comes. And I think there's a level of that just in general with life, with people, is that we always have to have things so planned and metered out and all of that. And I think there's just a level of just kind of giving it all up and just seeing what happens, like traveling without a roadmap, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we don't realize the power we have, our creative power. And if we were to open up and really let the inspiration and the intuition flow, especially with whatever we're interested in. I have a couple of siblings who are musicians just in their hobby life, and they do this. That's the same with them. So I think that anything that creatively stimulates you and gives you just pure joy, if you open yourself up to the gifts that are part of all of that, I think people would be amazed at what would flow through. And I think that with the energies of the planet right now, the creative juices, this is the best time for people to be creative, and no matter what it is that interests you.
It's interesting, and that's the thing that's even interesting about podcasting. I think podcasting is a modern version of therapy, and I've been doing this for a long time, interviews and whatnot, since 2011, and I still can't believe it's kind of this hit thing that's in movies, it's in shows. It's really weird to me because it's just been a part of something that I've been used to, but I think that I had talked for a long time about the fact that, this is the Bob Dylan moment, especially when we were living through COVID. If anybody that's creative out there couldn't find a level of inspiration, then they probably shouldn't be creative or shouldn't get into those things. So,
I agree.
You're totally right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and you ran in to the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that younger version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've led, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you give your younger self?
So I got married when I was 18 and then had two babies at 20 and 21. I think that if I could go back and talk to that Jane at 18, I I would say to be more of a stoic, if I'm honest, because I'm intuitive, I'm emotional, and I get wrapped up in different fear things like in any other human, and I think I would just say don't be afraid of the things that life throws at you. And I've not lived my life in fear, but I've had moments that are like when I made myself have a lot of grief, and it was all self-inflicted. It was overthink. It was, so I would just say let life flow and stay in gratitude as much as you can.
So we get off this call, time machine pulls up in front of your house. You can go anywhere in the history of our timeline as humans. Where would you go? What event would you love to see with your own eyes?
Oh, holy moly. Oh, you're asking me some damn good questions, Joe.
Good. This is hard. This is like the entire spectrum of our existence, so I know it's hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, God, I don't even know how I'd answer that because I'm such a in-the-moment kind of person. You know what would be actually really amazing? My parents met in college. I would have loved to go back and be a fly on the wall when my mom and dad had the conversation that started this crazy family of 14 kids. Because I think having that many kids, by the time I really was aware of, my mom and dad were pretty stressed and pretty just trying to survive through feeding us and clothing us. I would love to go back and be like, watch my parents as this young couple with their eyes full of dreams. And, that's what I would love to see because both my parents are gone right now and they left this, look at the legacy they left, freaking 14 kids. So yeah, I don't really have any like big famous event. To me, it would boil down to that.
I love those kinds of answers, and I think about my dad. He had a lot of health problems throughout his life, and it would have been really nice to see those younger years, to see how he rolled and how much easier it would have been for him to navigate this reality. So yeah, no, I love those answers. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, your clients, everyone around you, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I tend to put my heart on my sleeve. I'm also out there. I've got a YouTube channel. I post regularly. And, at this point in my life, I don't get embarrassed about things like I used to when I was younger. I think what people see is what they get, I tend to be a tiny bit vain, I guess. It's super, I'm aging naturally, but I will tell you aging is a tiny bit tough, especially for someone who's out there a little bit in the public. I think probably people that know me would probably be surprised that I'm a little vainer than I let on.
Yeah. Well, and that's the nature of this question. It kind of gets to the essence of who we are, so to speak.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there wants to delve into your world, learn more, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
Well, so like I said, I have a YouTube channel. It's under Barlow Herbal. And my website is barlowherbal.com. And, my book just got released on Amazon on May 28th, so about a month ago. And it's called Be Your Own Shaman, where I basically I want to empower people to realize how easy it is to take care of their health on some stuff that you think that you might not realize you can actually take care of your self this way. So, Be Your Own Shaman is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, super easy to find. And then, the typical Instagram at Barlow Herbal, Facebook, Barlow Herbal. So that's where you can find me. I'm kind of the face of it all.
One of my best friends of all time at one point, and he wrote this down. I don't know where it was on social media somewhere, but he said, the cheapest and best healthcare in the world is just take care of yourself.
Yeah. That's it in a nutshell.
And I was just like, it was very profound, but it's true. It's totally right in front of you. Hey, this has been really great. Thank you so much, Jane, for taking a minute out today to kind of, put your story out there. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's been really fun talking to you, and I think that this is one of the best things I love about connecting with people on different podcasts is because then you get to make new friends. It's like I would have never known you. So Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.